The wind carried whispers of rebellion. A symphony of discontent played out on the frayed edges of a dynasty, teetering towards its twilight. I, once a dweller in a world humming with electricity and steel, now found myself adrift in the sinuous currents of ancient China, a land painted with the vibrant strokes of warring states and philosophical ferment. My mind, a repository of modern stratagems and scientific certainties, was a jarring anomaly in this realm of silk robes and ancestral veneration. The clash was immediate. A dissonant chord struck between the pragmatic rationality I had embraced and the mystical reverence that permeated every facet of this ancient world. Where I saw engineering problems to be solved with applied physics, they saw the capricious hand of heaven, demanding appeasement and divination. Where I valued empirical evidence and logical deduction, they clung to the wisdom of ancestors, their pronouncements etched in bone and bronze. My attempts to introduce concepts like crop rotation and basic sanitation were met with suspicion, dismissed as the ramblings of a foreign devil. As famine gnawed at the bellies of the peasantry and disease swept through the ranks of the soldiery, some began to listen, their eyes widening with a flicker of hope as they witnessed the tangible results of my unorthodox methods. But knowledge, I soon discovered, was a double-edged sword. The more I shared, the more I became a target. My innovations threatened the established order, the entrenched power of the landed gentry, and the superstitious priesthood. Whispers of witchcraft and demonology followed me like shadows, painting me as a dangerous heretic, a disruptor of the cosmic harmony. And so, I found myself walking a tightrope, balancing the desire to alleviate suffering with the need to survive in a world that viewed my very existence as an affront. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily upon me, the fate of countless lives hanging in the balance. Was I a savior, destined to drag this ancient land kicking and screaming into a new era? Or was I merely a fool, destined to be crushed beneath the weight of tradition, another forgotten footnote in the annals of history? The answer, I knew, would be written in blood and fire, etched upon the very soul of this land. Yet, whispers of doubt threatened to drown out the nascent hope. Could I truly bridge the chasm between my modern sensibilities and the ingrained beliefs of this ancient world? Every decision felt like navigating a minefield, each step carrying the potential to trigger unforeseen consequences. The sheer scale of the task was overwhelming. I was but one person, armed with knowledge gleaned from a world they could scarcely imagine, yet surrounded by a sea of tradition, superstition, and unwavering conviction in the old ways. The faces of those who looked to me for guidance swam before my eyes. The farmers desperate for a better harvest, the soldiers yearning for victory, the scholars hungry for knowledge. Their hopes were a beacon, yet also a burden. Failure was not an option, not when so many lives depended on my success. But what if my efforts to improve their lives only served to disrupt the delicate balance of their world, leading to chaos and destruction? The line between progress and destruction blurred, and I found myself wrestling with a profound moral dilemma. Was I justified in imposing my vision upon them, even if it meant challenging their most deeply held beliefs? Or did I have a responsibility to respect their traditions, even if it meant perpetuating injustice and inequality? The answer eluded me, lost in the labyrinth of time and cultural divides. All I knew was that I had to tread carefully, for the fate of this ancient land, and perhaps my own soul, hung precariously in the balance. The weight of my choices pressed down on me, an invisible armor forged from the expectations of a world I barely understood. Each decision, each decree, was a gamble with the lives and destinies of those who looked to me for guidance. Sleep offered no escape, only a relentless replay of faces, hopeful, fearful, defiant. I saw the glint of ambition in the eyes of my generals, the silent plea for mercy in the gaze of the conquered, the unwavering loyalty of those who believed I could usher in a new era of prosperity and justice. But what did they know of the world I came from, a world where the very foundations of their society had crumbled into dust? How could I explain the concepts of democracy, equality, and individual freedom to a people who had known only the iron fist of emperors and the rigid hierarchies of feudalism. The chasm between our worlds seemed insurmountable, a gaping wound in the fabric of time itself. And then there were the whispers, the hushed rumors of dark forces stirring in the shadows, ancient gods, forgotten rituals, and prophecies foretelling the rise of a new hegemon, a bringer of light or a harbinger of destruction. I dismissed them as mere superstition, the product of fear and ignorance, but deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, a nagging suspicion that there was more to this world than I could comprehend. Perhaps I was not merely a stranger in a strange land, but a pawn in a game far grander and more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. The thought sent a chill down my spine, a premonition of the trials to come. I was no longer just a leader, but a target, a symbol, a vessel for forces beyond my control. And as I gazed out at the sprawling landscape of my kingdom, I knew that the true battle had only just begun. The weight of leadership settled upon me, heavy as a king's crown, yet sharp as a headsman's axe. Each decision, each decree, was a gamble with the lives of my people, a dance on the precipice of chaos. The whispers in the court grew louder, the gazes more calculating. They saw not a king, but an anomaly, a puzzle to be solved, a tool to be wielded. My nights were haunted by visions, fragmented memories of a life I no longer knew, a world of steel and glass, of roaring machines and endless skies. These visions, once a comfort, now felt like a curse, a constant reminder of the chasm that separates me from this ancient realm. I am a ghost in my own life, a stranger in my own skin, forever caught between two worlds. The land itself seemed to conspire against me. Whispers carried on the wind spoke of forgotten gods and ancient spirits, of powers that lay dormant beneath the soil, waiting to be awakened. The very stones seemed to pulse with a hidden energy, a resonance that both terrified and intrigued me. I felt a growing compulsion to understand this world, to unravel its mysteries, to master the forces that govern its destiny. But with each step forward, I sensed a darker presence lurking in the shadows, a malevolent force that seeks to corrupt and consume, to twist the very fabric of reality to its own twisted design. It is a battle not of steel and fire, but of will and spirit, a struggle for the soul of this land, and perhaps for my own. The weight of such a destiny settled upon me, a mantle woven from hope and despair. Was I merely a pawn in some grand cosmic game, or did I possess the agency to shape my own fate, to defy the threads of destiny that seemed to bind me? The sterile halls of science and reason from my former life felt like a distant dream, a forgotten melody in the symphony of this ancient world. Yet, within that dissonance lay a strange harmony, a potential for synthesis. My modern mind, honed by logic and empirical observation, now grappled with concepts that defied quantification, with energies that pulsed beneath the earth, with whispers of gods and demons that danced on the edges of perception. I was an anomaly, a paradox, a stranger in a strange land, burdened with knowledge that could either elevate or destroy. The hidden energy of this land, as some called it, resonated within me, a symphony of unseen forces that flowed through ley lines and geomantic patterns. It was a power that could be harnessed, a force that could be wielded, but also a current that could overwhelm and consume. I felt its pull, the seductive allure of its potential, the terrifying awareness of its destructive capacity. And then there was the matter of good and evil, concepts that seemed so clear-cut in my previous existence, now blurred and distorted by the lens of this ancient world. Here, morality was not a fixed point, but a fluid spectrum, shaped by cultural norms, religious beliefs, and the whims of those in power. What was considered virtuous in one kingdom to be deemed heretical in another, and the line between savior and destroyer often blurred beyond recognition. As character name, thrust into this crucible of ancient power and moral ambiguity, I faced a daunting choice: to embrace the mantle of Ancient Overlord, to bend this world to my will with the force of my modern intellect, or to seek a more nuanced path, a way to bridge the chasm between the present and the past, to forge a new destiny that honored the wisdom of both worlds. But even as I wrestled with these questions, a chilling premonition settled upon me, a sense of impending darkness that threatened to engulf all that I held dear. The malevolent force I had sensed earlier was growing stronger, its tendrils reaching out to corrupt the land and its people. It was a battle not only for survival, but for the very soul of this world, a conflict that would test the limits of my strength, my courage, and my humanity. The weight of this revelation settled upon me, heavy as the ancient stones of the palace. I was no mere traveler, lost in the labyrinth of time, but a fulcrum upon which the fate of this era rested. The hidden energy they spoke of, the land's very lifeblood, resonated within me, a symphony of power and responsibility that both terrified and exhilarated. Yet, even as I embraced this destiny, a disquieting question lingered. Could one truly impose a modern understanding of justice and morality upon a world governed by ancient laws and beliefs? Was I not, in my attempts to guide and protect, merely perpetuating the cycle of dominance, a new overlord in an old land? The whispers of the Chosen One echoed in my mind, a haunting melody that spoke of isolation and sacrifice. Was I doomed to walk this path alone, forever burdened by the expectations of a people who saw in me a savior, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness? The psychological toll of such a burden was immense, a constant battle against self-doubt and the fear of failure. And what of the nature of good and evil in this world? Was it as clear-cut as the philosophies I had studied, or were they merely shades of grey, twisted and distorted by the lens of culture and circumstance? The gods and demons of this land seemed to dance in a delicate balance, their motives as inscrutable as the ancient texts they inspired. As I grappled with these profound questions, the chilling premonition that had haunted me intensified. The malevolent force that lurked beneath the surface of this world was growing stronger, its tendrils of corruption reaching out to ensnare the hearts and minds of the people. It was a darkness born not of mere physical threat, but of a deeper, more insidious evil, the erosion of hope, the triumph of despair. I knew then that my journey had only just begun. This was not merely a quest for power or dominion, but a battle for the very soul of this world, a conflict that would demand not only my strength and courage, but also my unwavering commitment to the values I held dear. For in the end, it was not enough to be a chosen one or an ancient overlord. I had to be something more, a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness, a protector of the innocent, and a champion of hope. The weight of that realization crashed upon me, heavier than any armor, sharper than any blade. To wield the knowledge of a future yet to be written in a land steeped in ancient traditions was not a gift, but a curse. I was an anomaly, a discordant note in a symphony of rituals and beliefs I barely understood. My modern sensibilities, my ingrained notions of justice and equality, clashed violently with the rigid hierarchies and brutal realities of this era. Every decision became a tightrope walk. To act according to my conscience was to risk shattering the delicate balance of this world, to introduce concepts that could unravel the very fabric of their society. Yet, to remain silent, to stand idly by while injustice reigned, was to betray everything I believed in. The psychological impact was a relentless torment. I was adrift in time, disconnected from the familiar anchors of my past, and uncertain of my place in this new, unforgiving reality. The whispers of ley lines and hidden energies, once relegated to the realm of pseudoscience, now seemed to thrum beneath my very feet. This land pulsed with a power I could not comprehend, a force that resonated with the ancient myths and folklore that were now more than just stories. They were the keys to understanding this world, to navigating its treacherous currents. But to tap into that power was to invite the unknown, to open myself to forces that could corrupt as easily as they could heal. And then there was the question of good and evil. Concepts I had once believed to be self-evident now seemed to shift and blur like desert mirages. What was considered virtuous here might be seen as an abomination in my time, and vice versa. The moral compass I had relied on my entire life spun wildly, leaving me lost in a labyrinth of conflicting ideologies. Was I to impose my values upon this world, to force it to conform to my ideals? Or was I to adapt, to compromise, to risk losing myself in the process? They called me the chosen one, destined to bring balance to this fractured land. They saw me as a beacon of hope, a savior who would deliver them from darkness. But I was no hero. I was merely a woman, thrust into a world I did not understand, burdened with expectations I could not possibly meet. The journey to becoming an ancient overlord was not a path paved with glory, but a descent into the depths of moral ambiguity. And as I stood on the precipice, staring into the abyss, I knew that the choices I made would not only determine my fate, but the fate of this entire world. The whispers of Chosen One clung to me, like the scent of smoke for a battlefield. They saw in me a reflection of their desperate hopes, a conduit for change, a world ossified by tradition and choked by the iron grip of feudal lords. Yet, the irony was a bitter draught. I, a woman displaced in time, was now burdened with resurrecting their past. The term feudalism, once a dry entry in a history textbook, had become the suffocating reality of my existence, a web of obligations, loyalties bought and sold, and a hierarchy that crushed the very spirit it claimed to protect. Each day was a tightrope walk between my modern sensibilities and the brutal pragmatism of this era. Concepts of equality, of individual rights, were met with blank stares, suspicion, or outright hostility. I was a discordant note in their carefully orchestrated symphony of power, a threat to the established order simply by existing. My knowledge, once a source of confidence, now felt like a dangerous weapon, capable of shattering the delicate balance upon which their world rested. And then there were the myths, the whispers of hidden energies that pulsed beneath the surface of the land. Ley lines, geomancy, concepts that once resided in the realm of pseudoscience now seemed to thrum with a tangible power. The earth itself seemed to breathe, to react to the ebb and flow of human emotion, to amplify the darkness and the light within us. Was it real, or was it simply the desperate yearning of a people seeking solace in a world seemingly devoid of reason? I could not tell. The weight of their expectations pressed down on me, the mantle of Ancient Overlord threatening to suffocate the woman I once was. How could I, a product of a world valuing progress and individual liberty, possibly navigate the treacherous currents of a society built on rigid hierarchies and unwavering obedience? The line between good and evil blurred with each passing day, each decision a gamble with the lives of those who had placed their faith in me. Was I truly leading them towards a brighter future, or was I merely paving the road to a different kind of tyranny, one masked by the veneer of progress? The answer eluded me, lost in the labyrinth of my own doubts and fears. The crown's weight, once a beacon of hope, now crushes me. Each decree, each judgment, rings with the discord of colliding worlds. How can I, a soul steeped in equality and freedom, reconcile myself to this feudal tapestry I now oversee? The villagers, their faces maps of generations of hardship, look to me for salvation, for respite from endless toil and tribute. Yet, the very system that binds them is the foundation upon which my power rests. I find myself drawn to ancient texts, poring over forgotten philosophies and arcane rituals. Geomancy, the art of divining the earth's energies, offers glimpses into the unseen forces that shape this land. Ley lines, whispered about in hushed tones, are said to connect sacred sites, pulsing with mystical power. Could these beliefs unlock a new path, harmonizing old and new? Or are they illusions, shimmering mirages in the desert of my ignorance? Rebellion whispers grow louder, fueled by the discontent of those chafing under tradition's yoke. The nobles, sensing the shifting tides, eye me with suspicion. Their loyalty is brittle as autumn leaves. I know any misstep could plunge the kingdom into chaos, unleashing bloodshed and betrayal. Yet, to remain stagnant, clinging to the old ways, is to condemn my people to a slow, agonizing decline. The bustling cities and technological marvels of my former life fade with each passing day. Am I merely a ghost, a phantom clinging to memories that have no place here? Or can I forge a new destiny, a future where ancient wisdom intertwines with the promise of progress. The answer, I know, lies not in grand pronouncements or sweeping reforms, but in small, quiet acts of courage and compassion. It is in listening to the downtrodden, in championing the forgotten, that I will define my reign, and perhaps, in doing so, I will find my own place in this strange and wondrous land. Even as I embrace this reality, a disquieting question lingers. Am I merely an impostor, a charlatan masquerading as a ruler? The weight of expectation presses down, threatening to suffocate my very ideals. How can I reconcile equality and justice with the ingrained hierarchies of this feudal society? How can I introduce scientific progress and rational thought to a world steeped in superstition and tradition? The chasm between my modern sensibilities and this land's ancient customs seems insurmountable. I am caught in a perpetual dance of adaptation and resistance, torn between honoring the past and yearning for a better future. Each decision is fraught with consequence, each step shadowed by potential repercussions. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a flicker of hope remains. I see it in the eyes of farmers who dare to dream of freedom, in the whispers of scholars who yearn for knowledge beyond dogma, in the quiet acts of defiance that challenge the established order. In these sparks of resilience, I find the strength to persevere. Perhaps, I muse, the true measure of a ruler lies not in power, but in the lives they touch, not in palaces or armies, but in simple acts of kindness and empathy that ripple outwards, transforming the world one soul at a time. And so, I resolve to approach my reign not as a conqueror, but as a catalyst, empowering the people to realize their potential. For in their triumphs, I will find my own redemption, and in their liberation, I will discover the true meaning of my unexpected journey. Even as these ambitions took root, a disquieting echo of my former life reverberated. The sterile logic of the modern world, the cold precision of data analysis, clashed violently with the visceral, untamed spirit of this ancient realm. Caught between two worlds, I am a reluctant Janus, gazing simultaneously at the past and the present. The court, steeped in tradition and rigid hierarchies, views unorthodox methods with suspicion. My insistence on empirical evidence, disdain for superstitious rituals, and relentless questioning of established norms are met with veiled hostility and thinly disguised contempt. I am seen as an anomaly, a disruption to the natural order, a barbarian daring to challenge the wisdom of generations. Perhaps they are right. Perhaps it is foolish to believe that progress and innovation can be seamlessly transplanted into this ancient soil. The weight of history presses down, a suffocating blanket of expectations and obligations, whispers of a past life, memories of a world that no longer exists, haunt my waking hours and invade my dreams. Amidst this turmoil, a flicker of hope remains. The common people, toiling in the fields, suffering under oppression, see a glimmer of possibility. They recognize a genuine desire to alleviate their suffering, to improve their lives, to create a more just and equitable society. Their unwavering faith becomes an anchor, keeping me grounded in the present, preventing me from being swept away by despair. And so, I resolve to navigate this treacherous path with caution and wisdom, to temper modern sensibilities with the ancient virtues of compassion and humility, to learn from the past, to embrace the present, and to strive towards a future where the best of both worlds can coexist in harmony. Deep within, I know the journey has only just begun, and the fate of this kingdom, and perhaps my own salvation, rests upon the choices I make. The weight of my decision pressed upon me, heavy as the jade ornaments adorning the emperor's concubines. Could I, a woman forged in the crucible of the 21st century, truly hope to reshape a world steeped in traditions as immutable as the mountains themselves? A profound clash of ideologies echoed within me, a fervent belief in equality against the rigid hierarchies of this ancient court, the scientific pursuit of knowledge against the mystical reverence for the heavens. My greatest weapon, and perhaps my gravest weakness, lay in the very modernity I sought to reconcile. Political science, gleaned from countless lectures and late-night debates, taught me that power, in any era, was a delicate dance of cooperation and control, a game played with the highest stakes. Game theory, with its cold calculations of strategic interactions, seemed a stark contrast to the passionate loyalties and brutal betrayals that define this court. Yet I recognized its underlying truth. Every alliance forged, every secret whispered, every decree issued was a move on an intricate chessboard. But this was no mere game. The lives of countless souls hung in the balance, their fates intertwined with the whims of a capricious emperor and the machinations of ambitious ministers. Could I introduce concepts of democracy and accountability to a society where the divine right of kings was unquestioned? Could I challenge the entrenched status inequality, the chasm between the privileged elite and the struggling masses, without igniting a conflagration that would consume the kingdom? And then there was the insidious pull of chaos, the unpredictable nature of human behavior that defied all logical models. Chaos theory whispered that even the smallest action could have unforeseen consequences, that my attempts to guide this kingdom towards a brighter future could inadvertently unleash a storm of unforeseen destruction. How could I navigate such treacherous waters, where every choice was fraught with peril and the very fabric of reality seemed to shift with the changing winds? Perhaps, I mused, the key lay not in imposing my modern ideals upon this ancient world, but in fostering a diffusion of innovation, a gradual acceptance of new ideas that would take root and blossom in their own time. Like the early adopters of a revolutionary technology, I would need to identify those within the court who were open to change, those who possessed the vision to see beyond the rigid confines of tradition. I would need to demonstrate the relative advantage of my ideas, to show how they could enhance the kingdom's prosperity and stability, while remaining compatible with its core values. Yet, even as I formulated my strategies, a chilling realization washed over me. I was not merely a detached observer, a scientist conducting an experiment. I was a participant in this grand drama, a player on the chessboard, and my own heart was not immune to the passions and prejudices that swirled around me. Could I truly remain objective? Could I maintain my moral compass in this labyrinth of intrigue and desire? Or would I, too, succumb to the temptations of power, the allure of ambition, and the seductive embrace of a world that threatened to consume me whole? The weight of my knowledge pressed down, a crushing burden of futures unknown to these souls, futures they unwittingly shaped. I saw the grand sweep of history, the rise and fall of empires, the slow, grinding march of progress, and knew that every decision I made, every word I spoke, could alter the course of events in ways I could scarcely imagine. The very air crackled with potential, with infinite possibilities branching out from each moment like the roots of some ancient, unknowable tree. Yet, I was also trapped, a ghost in the machine of this world. My understanding of political science, of game theory, and the diffusion of innovation was a foreign tongue in a land where power was wielded through blood and whispers, where loyalty was a commodity bought unsold, and where the only game that mattered was survival. How could I explain the intricacies of democracy to a court steeped in intrigue, the nuances of cognitive psychology to minds that believed in omens and prophecies? My knowledge felt not like a gift, but a curse, a constant reminder of the chasm that separated me from these people, from this time, and the human heart, that most unpredictable of variables, complicated matters further. I found myself drawn to the very individuals I knew were destined for greatness, for tragedy, for both. Their passions were raw, their ambitions untamed, their capacity for love and hate boundless. I saw in them the seeds of both their triumphs and their downfalls, and I yearned to guide them, to protect them, to steer them away from the precipice of their fates. But to do so would be to betray my own principles, to tamper with the delicate tapestry of time, to risk unraveling the very fabric of reality. The chaos of this world threatened to overwhelm me, to shatter my carefully constructed facade of objectivity. I was a scientist adrift in a sea of emotion, a scholar grappling with the visceral realities of power, a time traveler struggling to reconcile the future I knew with the present I was living. And in the depths of my soul, a terrifying question began to take root. Could I truly change this world for the better? Or was I destined to become just another player in its endless, bloody game? The weight of my knowledge, once a source of pride, now felt like a crushing burden. I saw patterns in the court's intrigues, echoes of game theory playing out in the dance of alliances and betrayals. Each player, a rational actor striving for power, blinded by ambition, unaware that their carefully calculated moves were but ripples in a chaotic sea. I understood the principles of diffusion of innovation, the stages by which new ideas took hold, yet I was powerless to accelerate the process, to force enlightenment upon a world steeped in tradition. My mind, trained to dissect and analyze, struggled to comprehend the sheer otherness of this era. I yearned to apply the frameworks of political science, to understand the undercurrents of power that shaped this kingdom. But the ancient world resisted my modern lens. Their motivations felt alien, their values inverted. What I considered virtuous was seen as weakness here, and what I deemed barbaric was often celebrated as strength. I was like an anthropologist observing a lost tribe, a sociologist studying a society on the brink of collapse, yet I was also a participant, forced to navigate this treacherous landscape with only my wits and my fragmented memories. The cognitive dissonance was a constant torment. My mind insisted on rationality, on cause and effect, but the world around me operated on a different logic, a logic of superstition and divine right. I perceived the seeds of potential conflicts, the societal inequalities that could blossom into revolutions, yet I was bound by the constraints of my position, by the fear of disrupting the delicate balance of power. Could I stand idly by, a detached observer, as events unfolded, or did I dare to intervene, to risk altering the course of events, knowing that even the smallest change could have unforeseen and catastrophic consequences? The weight of my knowledge was a crushing burden. I saw the future, the inevitable march of progress that this era was blissfully ignorant of. My mind, a battlefield of cognitive dissonance, struggled to reconcile the scientific rationality of my past with the mystical worldview of this ancient court. They spoke of omens and prophecies, of celestial alignments dictating earthly affairs. I, who had dissected the human brain and mapped the neural pathways of thought, was expected to decipher the entrails of chickens for guidance. Each day was a tightrope walk between appearing wise and being branded a heretic. I offered counsel informed by sociological principles, speaking of societal cohesion and the dangers of unchecked power, but couched it in the language of moral virtue and ancestral wisdom. I introduced concepts of political science, subtly suggesting checks and balances, but framed them as ways to honor the mandate of heaven and ensure the emperor's continued benevolence. The faces around me were masks of intrigue and suspicion. They saw a scholar, a trusted advisor, but beneath their deference, I sensed a simmering unease. My understanding of the world, so fundamentally different from theirs, was a constant threat. I was an anomaly, a glitch in their reality, and I knew that my continued existence here depended on my ability to navigate this treacherous landscape. Yet, the more I learned about this era, the more I was drawn into its intricate web of relationships and power struggles. I saw the potential for greatness, for a flourishing society built on principles of justice and equality, but I also saw the seeds of its destruction, the rigid social hierarchies, the ingrained prejudices, the blind faith in tradition. These were the forces that would ultimately tear this world apart, and I, the outsider, the time traveler, was caught in the middle, torn between my desire to help and my fear of interfering. Could I truly stand by and watch history unfold, knowing that I possessed the knowledge to potentially influence it? Or was I destined to be a catalyst for change, a disruptive force that would forever alter the course of this ancient civilization? The answer, I feared, lay not in the stars, but within the depths of my own conflicted heart. The weight of that decision was a physical burden, pressing down on me with the force of 1,000 collapsing temples. My mind, a battlefield of warring ideologies, struggled to reconcile logic with deeply ingrained traditions. Cognitive dissonance screamed within me, a cacophony of ethics clashing against customs. Here, in this world seemingly untouched by modern advancements, concepts like individual rights and democratic ideals were foreign. The very fabric of their society was woven with threads of hierarchy, destiny, and obedience, principles I had spent my entire life challenging. To introduce my values, to speak of equality and freedom, would be akin to unleashing a tempest upon a placid lake. The resulting waves could shatter the delicate balance of their civilization, drowning them in a sea of unforeseen consequences. Yet, could I, in good conscience, stand idly by as injustice and suffering occurred? Could I reconcile my sensibilities with the realities of this world, where power reigned and the voices of the marginalized were silenced? Each day, I was confronted with choices that tested the limits of my morality, forcing me to question the very essence of what it meant to be human. The principles I once held sacred now felt like shackles, binding me to a path of inaction when every fiber of my being screamed for intervention. I was a stranger in a strange land, haunted by the spectre of what could be. My knowledge was both a blessing and a curse, a beacon of hope and a harbinger of destruction. The more I learned about this civilization, the more I realized the implications of my presence. I was not merely an observer. I was a variable in the equation of history, and as time continued to slip through my fingers, I knew that my decision, to act or to abstain, would shape the destiny of this world, for better or for worse. The weight of my modern mind pressed heavily against the tapestry of this ancient world. Each sunrise was a stark reminder of the chasm separating me from these people, their beliefs, their very way of life. I carried within me the echoes of future empires, the ghosts of technologies yet to be conceived, and the burden of knowing how it would all eventually crumble. Time, once a linear progression in my understanding, had become a swirling vortex of possibilities and paradoxes. The butterfly effect, a mere theory in my old world, now manifested in the minutiae of my daily existence. A casual word, a fleeting action, could unravel the delicate threads of this timeline, potentially birthing a reality unrecognizable from the history books I once knew. I was acutely aware of the cognitive dissonance gnawing at my sanity. The clash between my ingrained modern values and the brutal realities of this era was a constant torment. The casual acceptance of slavery, the rigid social hierarchies, the pervasive superstition, all were dissonant chords in the symphony of my soul. The culture shock wasn't merely discomfort, it was a profound existential crisis. I yearned for the familiar comfort of my own time, yet I was inextricably bound to this era, a prisoner of my own transience. The ethics of intervention haunted my waking moments. Was it my right to tamper with the course of history? Even with noble intentions, could I, with my limited understanding of this world's intricate web of cause and effect, truly make a difference for the better? Or would my actions, however well-meaning, ultimately lead to unforeseen and catastrophic consequences? As I delved deeper into the military strategies and tactics of this ancient age, I found a strange resonance with the timeless principles of warfare. Deception, maneuver, and adaptability were as crucial on these battlefields as they were in the digital arenas of my former life. Yet, the stakes were infinitely higher here, the cost of failure measured not in lost resources, but in human lives. The ancient technologies, though rudimentary by my standards, held a certain primitive beauty. The ingenuity and resourcefulness of these people, their ability to create tools and structures from the raw materials of their environment, was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. I saw echoes of the future in their inventions, the seeds of progress that would one day blossom into the marvels of my own time. Disease and medicine in this era were a grim dance with death. Simple infections could become fatal, and the lack of understanding about hygiene and sanitation was appalling. I carried within me the knowledge of cures and preventatives, but the challenge lay in translating that knowledge into practical action, in overcoming the ingrained beliefs and practices of this society. The agricultural practices of this ancient world were both ingenious and precarious. The cyclical nature of planting and harvesting, the reliance on the whims of nature, the constant struggle against famine, all painted a stark picture of the fragility of human existence. I saw the potential for improvements, for innovations that could alleviate suffering and increase yields. But I also knew that any intervention could disrupt the delicate balance of this ancient ecosystem. And so, I stood at the crossroads of destiny, a modern mind adrift in an ancient world. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, fraught with peril, and burdened with the weight of countless possibilities. I was no longer merely a traveler. I was a catalyst, a force of change, and the fate of this world rested, in some small but significant way, upon my shoulders. The weight of my decision pressed down on me, heavy as the stones of the forgotten temples dotting the landscape. Cognitive dissonance gnawed at my sanity. One moment, I was Dr. Elias Thorne, a historian poring over dusty tomes. The next, I was what? A ghost in the machine of time, a glitch in the matrix of reality. The faces of the villagers swam before me, etched with a hope I didn't deserve. They saw me as a savior, a bringer of progress. But what right did I have to impose my 21st century ideals on their ancient ways? Was I not, in essence, a colonizer of their minds, a conqueror armed with knowledge instead of steel? I thought of the butterfly effect, that insidious whisper of chaos theory. A single change, however small, could unravel the tapestry of history, unleashing a storm of unforeseen consequences. Could I truly predict the outcome of my actions, or would I merely become a pawn in the grand game of fate, a puppet dancing to the tune of unintended consequences? The sun beat down upon me, relentless and unforgiving, mirroring the turmoil within my soul. I was caught between two worlds, two eras, two conflicting sets of values. To act was to risk altering the course of history. To do nothing was to condemn these people to a life of hardship and ignorance. Sleep offered no respite, only a kaleidoscope of fragmented memories and haunting visions. I saw the rise and fall of civilizations, the clash of empires, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. I witnessed the horrors of war, the triumphs of art, the enduring power of the human spirit, and through it all, I sensed the delicate threads of causality, the intricate web of cause and effect that bound all things together. I yearned for the familiar comforts of my old life, for the sterile order of the laboratory, for the rational discourse of academia. But I knew, deep down, that there was no turning back. I had crossed the Rubicon, stepped through the looking glass, and entered a realm where the rules of reality were malleable, where the past was not a fixed entity, but a fluid and ever-changing landscape. My hand trembled as I reached for the ancient farming tools, my mind racing with possibilities and uncertainties. I was no longer just Elias Thorne, the historian. I was something more, something other. I was a time traveler, a cultural interloper, a potential destroyer of worlds. And as I took my first step into the fields, I knew that I was embarking on a journey from which there could be no return, a journey that would test the very limits of my humanity. The weight of the hoe felt alien in my hands, its rough-hewn handle a stark contrast to the sleek devices I once wielded. Each swing was a clumsy dance, a mockery of the practiced movements of the weathered farmers around me. They watched with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, their eyes holding the wisdom of generations rooted in this land. I was an anomaly, a ghost in their vibrant tapestry of life, and the chasm between our worlds yawned with every labored breath I took. Sleep offered no respite, only a relentless replay of fragmented memories, the sterile hum of the laboratory, the faces of my colleagues, the taste of synthetic coffee, all fading like echoes in a forgotten dream. Here, the nights were filled with the symphony of crickets and the distant howl of unseen beasts, a primal chorus that stirred a deep unease within my soul. The faces of my loved ones flickered like dying embers, their voices growing faint with each passing dawn. I found myself drawn to the children, their innocent eyes untainted by the harsh realities of their world. They gathered around me, their laughter a fragile melody that momentarily silenced the cacophony of my anxieties. I told them stories of my world, tales of flying machines and talking boxes, of a world where advancements have strived to reduce hunger and disease. They listened with rapt attention, their imaginations taking flight, their innocent hearts believing in the possibilities. But even in their innocent gaze, I saw a reflection of my own despair, a haunting reminder of all that I had lost. I tried to reconcile my modern sensibilities with the brutal pragmatism of this ancient world, the casual acceptance of death, the rigid social hierarchy, the unwavering belief in gods and spirits. It was a world steeped in superstition and tradition, a world where reason and logic held little sway. My attempts to introduce new ideas were met with resistance, my knowledge dismissed as the ramblings of a madman. I was an outsider, a heretic, a threat to the established order. Yet, amidst the darkness, glimmers of hope emerged, a shared smile with a fellow farmer, a moment of understanding in the eyes of a child, a spark of curiosity in the mind of a craftsman. These were the seeds of change, the tiny acts of defiance that challenged the inertia of the past. I knew that I could not single-handedly transform this world, but perhaps, just perhaps, I could plant a few seeds of progress, seeds that might one day blossom into a brighter future. But at what cost? Was I merely a catalyst for change, or a harbinger of destruction? The weight of that question settled heavily upon my shoulders, a constant reminder of the precariousness of my existence, the fragility of time itself. The tapestry of time, once a distant abstraction, has become the very fabric of my being. I am no longer merely a scholar of history, but a participant in its unfolding drama, a player on a stage where the stakes are not measured in grades or accolades, but in lives and legacies. The ancient world, with its brutal beauty and its intricate web of customs and traditions, is now my reality. My modern sensibilities clash against its ancient ethos, like thunder against stone. The concept of cognitive dissonance, once a theoretical construct from my psychology textbooks, now manifests in every interaction, every decision. The stark contrast between my values and those of this era is a constant source of internal conflict. How can I reconcile my belief in equality with a society built on rigid hierarchies? How can I champion individual liberty in a world where destiny is dictated by birth and circumstance? Each day is a tightrope walk, a delicate balancing act between preserving my integrity and adapting to survive. The culture shock is a relentless assault on my senses. The sights, the sounds, the smells, all are alien, jarring. The very air seems thick with the weight of centuries, a palpable sense of history that both fascinates and overwhelms me. I yearn for the familiar comforts of my former life, for the anonymity of a bustling city, for the simple pleasure of a hot shower. But those are luxuries I can no longer afford. I am adrift in a sea of antiquity, forced to navigate by the stars of my own moral compass. The ethics of intervention weigh heavily on my conscience. Is it my right to tamper with the past, to alter the course of history, even with the best of intentions? The butterfly effect looms large in my mind, a constant reminder of the unintended consequences that can arise from even the smallest of actions. I am walking through a minefield of possibilities, each step fraught with peril. One wrong move, one ill-considered decision, could unravel the very fabric of time. And yet, I cannot stand idly by while injustice and suffering prevail. My modern education has instilled in me a sense of responsibility, a belief in the power of knowledge to effect change. I know that I cannot single-handedly transform this world, but perhaps, just perhaps, I can plant a few seeds of progress, seeds that might one day blossom into a brighter future. But at what cost? Am I merely a catalyst for change, or a harbinger of destruction? The weight of that question settles heavily upon my shoulders, a constant reminder of the precariousness of my existence, the fragility of time itself. The grand tapestry of history unfurls before me, a panorama of human endeavor, of triumphs and tragedies etched in the annals of time. Yet, I stand apart, a solitary figure adrift in its currents, a discordant note in its ancient melody. My mind, a repository of modern knowledge, clashes with the ancient world's rigid structures and unwavering traditions. The weight of this anachronistic existence bears down on me, a heavy mantle of responsibility and doubt. I am but a stranger in a strange land, an alien amidst a sea of familiar faces, each etched with the harsh realities of their time. Their lives, governed by superstition and tradition, are a stark contrast to the world I once knew, a world of science and reason. How can I reconcile these two disparate realities? How can I bridge the chasm that separates my modern sensibilities from their ancient ways? The allure of power, the temptation to shape this world in my image, tugs at my soul. I see the potential for progress, the opportunity to alleviate suffering, to usher in an era of enlightenment. Yet, I am haunted by the spectre of unintended consequences, the butterfly effect that could ripple through time, unraveling the very fabric of existence. The more I learn, the more I realize that history is not a static entity, but a dynamic force, constantly evolving, constantly changing. My presence here is a catalyst, a variable introduced into an equation that has already been solved. Am I destined to disrupt the natural order, to unleash chaos upon this unsuspecting world? Or can I, through careful consideration and measured action, guide it towards a better future? The answer eludes me, shrouded in the mists of time. I am but a pawn in a cosmic game, a player on a stage far grander than I can comprehend. Yet, I cannot shirk my responsibility, cannot ignore the potential consequences of my actions. I must tread carefully, weigh every decision, and strive to be a force for good, even in the face of overwhelming uncertainty. But even as I embrace this challenge, a deep-seated fear gnaws at my heart. What if my efforts are in vain? What if my interventions lead to unforeseen disasters? The weight of these questions threatens to crush me, to extinguish the spark of hope that flickers within my soul. Yet, I cannot surrender. I must persevere, for the sake of this world, for the sake of the future, and for the sake of my own sanity.